bottles and cans, just clap your hands. Just clap your hands. Hello world, my name is Matt Spa, and I'm a photographer and video producer in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm also a big-time Beck fan, in case you couldn't figure it out. And this video is not about Beck, and it's not even so much a product review as it is a look at a piece of gear that I have found to be much more useful than I originally thought it would be. If you're new here, my channel oscillates wildly around all things audio, video, and photo related. If that spins up your turbo or drops the needle on your LP, I hope you'll consider subscribing. Most of my professional work is interviews, backed up with what I call live action B-roll, shots of things that are naturally happening, an office setting, or a manufacturing process, or a dude tending his dahlias. I don't really do a lot of product work, but my YouTube content often focuses on a specific thing, like a product or tool that I use. To make those shots more interesting, or sometimes to help communicate a concept better, I use a product turntable. And in this video, I'm going to show you the specific one I use, but I want to focus more on how I use it and share some tips and techniques that will hopefully give you some insight into what this simple piece of gear can bring to your video production. For what it's worth, this is my other turntable. I built this 30-pound behemoth about 15 years ago when I was archiving my collection of 78 RPM records. For anyone interested, the guts are mostly from a VPI Scout, but the design and the execution and everything are all mine, but I digress. My product turntable is made by Comzim or Comshim, depending on how well you speak Chinese, I guess. It's the MT320KL40. It's white, it's a hair over 12 inches in diameter, is variable speed in both directions, and boasts a payload capacity of 44 pounds. It's definitely a consumer-grade piece of equipment. Professional product turntables made for photo and video work can easily cost 10 to 20 times what I paid for this one, which about a year or so ago was around $70 US. There are cheaper ones out there, but this is probably as low as I'd go considering the kind of stuff that I want to do for reliable use. The trade-offs at this price point are noise and weight. It's loud, so loud that I couldn't turn it on during my opening shot because of the microphone placement. Let me see what happens now. If I turn this on, there we go. So it gives you a little beep when it comes on, and then as you adjust the speed, it beeps to let you know that you're turning the knob, I guess. So that's as slow as it will go. And then that's as fast as it will go. And I can hear it. It's pretty audible to me. I don't know how much this is picking up, but anyway, it makes a racket. And it's really light. It's almost flimsy, if I'm honest. And even though it's rated for 44 pounds, I don't know that I'd be comfortable putting that much weight on it. Two things I was primarily looking at when I was shopping were payload and speed range. A heavier payload capacity means a stronger motor, which usually will translate into more stable operation, and that's good. The speed was just a personal preference. This model ranges, what did I say? It's 24 to 68 seconds per rotation. Is that right? That's right. There's no real mystery to using a product turntable. Once you have it level and stable, you put something on it and it spins around, and you turn your camera on and point it at the thing that's spinning and it rotates in the frame, and that's all real cool. But for me, it was kind of boring. So I'm gonna run through a few basic tips and then show you some techniques that I use to give my footage a bit more visual interest. If you wanna skip ahead, I will put timestamps in the description. Placement of whatever you're shooting will definitely affect the look of your footage. Depending on how you plan to edit your footage, you may need something to rotate on its center axis, or as close as you can get. So marking the center of the turntable can be helpful. For most of my shoots, I prefer having things off center. And given how I edit my footage, I think it makes for a more interesting shot. One catch is that with heavier objects, as they get further from the center, they may cause the turntable to stutter a little bit. When shooting, I almost always run the motor at its slowest speed, and I usually shoot my footage at 60 frames per second so I can slow things down further if I need to. You can always speed things up in post if you need to, but you can't slow your footage down. Well, I guess you can, but it'll look terrible. Unless you're green screening out the base, which I'll talk about in a minute, or you're cropping your subject, the platter is going to be in the shot. The first thing I did after waking up from watching my super boring footage was to get a round piece of glass. I got mine from a local glass shop for about 40 bucks. It's 18 inches in diameter, and it gives me a much larger base to work with. It also casts cool reflections on whatever's on the table. I can put a range of colored paper or textiles or Rorschach test prints under it, which combined with a shallow depth of field can really add to the scale of things. The glass also makes a really good template for cutting auxiliary platters, onto which I usually stick some small guides so that I can easily get it centered. I like to use these mottled gray canvases. Can you see that? If I move, you see that back there? Is it in focus? There it is. Anyway, there's a canvas back there and it's mottled and it's gray and I like to use them. I painted those things years ago and I use them as backgrounds, and I like to use them as backgrounds for turntable work. So I took a piece of foam core and I painted the same pattern on it. So this way, when this is underneath the glass, I get the cool reflections, but I also get consistency from foreground to background. And I think that helps to highlight kind of whatever I'm shooting. I use the turntable itself to make other little templates. This is just a black piece of foam core that I've been using to keep all the light from bouncing up into my face. So I can put this on here like so. I can use my little tabs to kind of line it up and get it centered. Put the glass on top of that. And now I've got this really large kind of area to work with. And like I said, cool reflections and gray backgrounds, and it looks great and I love it. I'm gonna round out this video with 3 techniques I've used that I feel like add interest to my rotating shots. I've used camera moves, I've used green screen, and I've used multiple shots that I then composite together in post to create a single clip. The first and simplest thing I found that helped out my turntable footage was to add camera movement. The easiest being just a simple pan move. Put your camera on a tripod, it's locked down, pan from left to right. For flexibility in post, I always shoot one moving the same direction as the rotation and one moving against it. One tip I'll throw in here is that if you're trying to land on a logo or something that needs to be in super sharp focus, do your shot backwards. Start focused on the logo or whatever it is, and then reverse the clip in post. Beyond the simple pan or tilt, you can use a slider, especially one that allows for rotation during the slide, and it can make for some super cool looking stuff. You can do a simple side to side or the push in, or my personal favorite, the flyby. Of course, handheld movement works really well too. Some suggestions there, I guess, would be use a wide focal length and keep your movements really simple so that things can stay smooth. One tricky part of employing camera movement is keeping your focus where you want it. On a tripod or handheld, I almost always will opt for manual focus, but on my small slider, that's not a viable option. If your camera has object tracking, you can try that. Touch screen focus can work for this too, or just setting the lens manually and letting the object move in and out of focus, I think makes for an engaging shot. In general terms, I'm not a big green screen guy. One of the biggest things I go for in my work is a sense of authenticity. And unless you're on a set purpose-built for green screen work or have some serious special effects skills, it's usually a struggle to me to produce something convincing. Where I do like to employ it is when I'm trying to illustrate a concept. Last year, I produced a video on the Movo VXR10 Pro. and I was comparing the Pro model to the standard VXR10. And they have two different polar patterns. They pick up sound in different areas. And I wanted to explain the concept of polar patterns and illustrate the differences between the two mics. I wanted to show the microphones rotating with speakers playing test tones into the mic. And then as the mic rotated, the tone would get louder and softer as the mic spun around. My solution was to use the turntable and shoot directly down on it. But I also wanted to put an audio meter graphic on the screen to show the levels of sounds getting louder and softer. My solution was to use green tape on the turntable surface and then make a panel to mask out the column of my speaker, and then I could just key all that in post. This allowed me to center the most important element, the microphone, show the rotation in reference to the speaker, and add my audio meters and other graphic information. If you really want to push green screen use with a turntable, check out Daniel Schiffer's video on that subject, which I'll link here and in the description. It's really, really great stuff. It will give you all kinds of creative ideas and things to try out. The last thing I want to show in this video is how I used my turntable to show a progression of camera rig build outs that I did for the DIY cage video that I made for my audio recorder. This could have been done using green screen as well, but I feel like I saved myself a lot of time in post by sorting out the shoot beforehand. To get that shot, it was key that I be able to make changes to the camera rig without it shifting around. To do it, I mounted my trusty 502 AH video head to a piece of MDF, and I centered that over the center rotation point of my turntable. I taped the turntable base down to the bench to ensure that it didn't move, and then I set up my initial rig configuration. I hit record on the camera, and I allowed that setup to make 2 full rotations. I then stopped the turntable, added the next component, and recorded 2 more rotations. I repeated this process for all the different configurations, and then cut them together, added transitions, and speed ramped the final footage to shave time, and even did a little bit of a zoom out to give more of a sense of it being a single shot. And when I say it like that, it sounds really simple, but the actual setup and shooting, I think, took at least a half a day, and many, many tries to get what I needed. A quick tip on this technique from my personal experience: don't touch your camera while you're getting all the separate shots. Either shoot everything in one clip or use a remote to start and stop the recording. You can stop the turntable, of course, to make changes to whatever you're shooting, but keep your hands off the camera. It will move, or you'll kick a tripod leg in the dark like I did twice. It finally worked. I learned a lot, and I'm pleased with the final result. I think that shot is even in my current reel. And that's my 2 cents on product turntables. I hope there's been something here that's got you thinking about creative ways to maybe add one to your video production arsenal. If you have other ideas or tips to share, please comment below. And that's it. Thanks so much for watching.